My name is Sir David Attenborough, and I am 98 years old. This is a Velociraptor, the most useless dinosaur ever. A generation ago, your parents thought these turkeys were deadly terminators, but now, we know so much more. Take a deep breath as I show you how absolutely pants they were.
You've read the title, I've done the math, it's confirmed. Velociraptors were as overrated as Pele. This is not a scam. The similarities are so striking it's mind-boggling. Exaggerated skills, worse competition than League One, and pretty laughable statistics. So everyone knows Pele. Brazilian, born in the 40s. Played for the legendary Santos, but barely anyone knows anything about Velociraptor, which is a little more under the radar. You're welcome. I did some off-camera research.
Velociraptor, in the language of the ancient Romans, Latin, means swift thief.
Yeah, right.
This, of course, is the genus name, and there are two species.
Osmolske and Mongoliensis. Mongoliensis is such an unfitting name. Genghis Khan was an absolute marauder back in the day. Einstein was a more successful marauder than Velociraptor.
Or even Sir David.
Yeah, that's enough, it's enough.
Velociraptors used to sneak around 75 million years ago in the late Cretaceous, the third and sadly final period of the Mesozoic era. As we move further up the evolutionary tree, we find that they belong to the Dromaeosauridae family, also known as the running lizards. Basically chickens with sharp teeth, improved cardio, and quick twitch muscle fibers. I may or may not have mentioned this, but Velociraptor was in fact a reptile. Now, where should we begin? Let's start with dimensions.
Jurassic Park showed these turkeys as 2 meters tall with an estimated mass of, 200 pounds, whereas in reality, they were only half a meter tall and weighed a mere 50 pounds.
About the same as a sack of potatoes.
And please keep in mind that not every potato sack on the market weighs 50 pounds, so you might have to experiment a bit with the quantity of potatoes.
Speed. Velociraptor is actually pretty pathetic when it comes to the all-time speed rankings.
Only 40 kilometers per hour. Even the ploddiest of plodsters in the animal kingdom are faster than that. I'm talking about giraffes. I'm talking about bison. Even wild boar, those good-for-nothing pigs, could have outrun the great Velociraptor. Velociraptors are also depicted as having scaly skin, which gives them this alien horror movie-esque vibe, when they actually look like little piñatas.
In other words, they had feathers, probably colourful ones, for mating rituals, camouflage,
and to scare their prey, maybe? Probably unsuccessfully. Sorta like Pele's sombrero. I'm joking, relax. They couldn't even fly, though.
Apparently, the pattern is that if an animal has symmetrical primary feathers, which aren't close to 10 in number, it is incapable of flying.
Emus have 1. Archaeopteryx had 12. It could fly. Only real hardcore fans know about Archaeopteryx. If you know about old wing, as we call it in the lab, you're not a casual. It's the same with Pele. Anywhere you look, Pele ran 100 meters in 11 seconds. Pele ran up and down the Matterhorn in 10 minutes. Pele this, Pele that. They talk about him like he was the fastest guy on the planet. 100 meters in 11 seconds is 32.7 kilometers per hour, which is absolute peanuts. Ronaldo at age 40 would beat this dude in a race. That clown Dominic Soboslai would run circles around him. Antonio Rudiger, with 86 kilograms of visceral fat, smokes Pele in a race. No disrespect to Pele, he's one of the GOATs, but come on. The flattery, man. These two were not as fast as people think. Velociraptors were actually a lot like kiwis. About half a meter tall, 50-ish pounds of pure muscle. How is no one talking about this? Couldn't fly to save its life? Wow. Anyhow, back to the script. Bite force.
According to a certain article, which I will link in the description if I can remember to do so, the Velociraptor had a bite force of 304 newtons.
Now this is a predicted value using skull width, evolutionary relationships, and Hubble's constant. But 304 newtons is less than peanuts.
The legendary Spinosaurus had a staggering bite force of 12,000 newtons.
Because most extant animals have their bite forces listed in PSI, you can't really make comparisons. But you just know 304 newtons doesn't sound like much. Just like Pele's goal count ain't much when you take out the goals he scored against a local milkman, Salah's out here scoring against beasts like Kepa and the great David Raya. Don't come at me with recency bias nonsense. Pele, on the other hand, was scoring against the likes of Carl Oskar Svensson, the greatest keeper of the 20th century. Velociraptor wasn't some kind of legendary big game hunter. Archaeological finds show, and I'm being 100% honest here, it was a bit of a pipsqueak.
In scientific terminology, it was a scavenger.
In 2008, Velociraptor teeth were found in the Gobi near the jawbone of a small herbivore. Now, I'm going to start being technical.
The jawbone had marks similar to those left by Velociraptor teeth. If the raptor had killed the herbivore, why did it start chewing on the jaw instead of other meaty body parts? Hence, we can conclude that the raptor was feeding on a carcass.
And a pretty old one if it was munching on the mandible. Now, in fairness, Pele was not the type of guy to scavenge goals by camping the box. But that's also only because none of his teammates were capable of getting in there in the first place. So, as I said, Velociraptor used to hang around in present-day Mongolia.
Now, even though Mongolia has produced chaps like Genghis, back in the Cretaceous, there were no seriously dangerous dinosaurs wandering around. You had the Overraptor, or Oviraptor, which means egg thief, by the way. You had the Sauronithoids and the Lynchoraptors. My point is, these guys were nobodies and the competition was pants. If you're going down in history as a killer, which the Velociraptor wasn't, you need to be fighting some big guns, like Carnotaurus, or Spinosaurus winphalicus, the deadliest predator in our planet's history. Our planet. Our planet.
On a similar note, Pele was playing against absolute cans compared to the players nowadays. You're telling me the Brazilian league back in the 60s was as competitive as the Prem? 1,000 plus goals, yeah right. Put prime Pele in Nottingham Forest, he's getting benched and outscored by Chris Wood. Real hardcore fans know that Salah's higher on the GOAT list than Pele. You get my point.
So, Velociraptor and other modern-day birds have these bony structures around their eyes, known as sclerotic rings.
And through some comparisons, the chaps down at the lab deduced that Velociraptors were nocturnal. T-Rex, on the other hand, was diurnal. So was the Velociraptor ducking any large predators that may have strolled into Mongolia by cowering in its den like a miserable rat? Perhaps. Pele ducked the European big leagues, so perhaps. There's something to that.
So, as I previously said, Velociraptors were overrated hunters.
First off, they weren't even taking on real tanks like Ankylosaurus, or even decently sized jumps like Parasaurolophus. No, they were hunting Protoceratops, the scum of the animal kingdom. Built like tofu and only 50 centimeters tall, Protoceratops was the poor man's Triceratops. And they found a fossil of this little goof going life and death with a raptor. Sure, the raptor's claw was in its throat, but it was fighting back, man. Biting the raptor's forelimb. This wasn't domination. It was war. And what makes the Velociraptor look even worse is the fact that the two were buried under some sand while actually fighting.
Clearly violating what I believe to be Ra's al Ghul's most basic tenet.
Always mind your surroundings. Now, there isn't exactly a link with Pele here, but there might have been if his dribble success rate was available to the public. And another thing, people talk about the Velociraptor's sickle claw as if it was some otherworldly weapon. The glaze is actually so insane, it is borderline delusional. Now there are going to be some absolute thugs in the comments saying, "What are you saying, man? The Velociraptor would rip out your kidneys with one slash." Yeah, right. The bally thing wasn't even meant for slashing, but for precision killing, targeting
The jugular vein, the carotid artery, or the trachea.
though another hypothesis suggests that maybe it was used for gripping onto the prey, so the raptor could feed on it while it died of blood loss and organ failure. This, as you know, is based off similarities between raptor talons and those of eagles and hawks. And that's about it, really.
Extinction. The dinosaurs' reign of terror ended about 65 million years ago when a big old asteroid had an inelastic collision with our planet. Our planet. But according to fossils, Velociraptors went AWOL 71 million years ago. The question is, why?
Haven't a clue, frankly. Another asteroid? Where's the crater? Probably climate change or increased competition. The same old story, but does it really matter
To our planet.
I'd like to say two things. Pele was ahead of his time and a top 5, no, let's say top 10 striker ever. But don't ever compare him to Messi or even Kareem the Dream. Secondly, the Velociraptor wasn't a complete pushover, but if I'm fighting one, you'd best believe I'm knocking that pipsqueak into orbit. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time.